Hello, everybody. I hope we're all doing well. If it's Earth Day or a little bit before or after Earth Day, happy Earth Day. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to make watercolor planets. Just a kind of fun way to celebrate Earth Day and also practice a watercolor technique called watercolor washes. So here's some, I practice on a few different types of paper. Here are some that I've done, and I'll just kind of walk you through it. Okay, so here are all of my supplies and some of the examples that I started already. You're going to need a watercolor palette, a cup of water, brush, and I have 3 different types of paper here that I've kind of tested on because they do give different effects. Watercolor washes are definitely best done on watercolor paper, which are these circles here. This one is the watercolor paper. I'll show you how to do it on watercolor paper, but obviously a lot of you won't have that. So if you don't have that, I'll try one on cardstock, and then this is just regular printer paper. So you can see it gives varying effects. The water and the paint will act differently on different papers, but you can still try it no matter what you have. Okay, so basically the idea today is to make a bunch of colorful circles. There's no rules to what colors you put in the circles, how you blend them. It doesn't even have to be a perfect circle. As you can see, mine are not perfect circles. It's just doing this exercise is a fun way to kind of explore blending colors, and that's what I started doing actually. It was not for a project, and then I thought, oh, they kind of look like a bunch of planets. So yeah, basically we're just practicing blending colors using our watercolor paints, using this technique, which starts off with getting your paper wet. So no paint on your brush, just your brush straight from water. Make sure it's not dripping too much. And what you're going to do is and you're going to have to kind of pay attention to where you're putting your paint. Well, my water's a little bit dirty, so you can kind of see. But basically, I'm just creating a circle with my brush of water. I'm creating a wet circle on my paper. Okay, it's got a fair amount of water on there. Then I'm gonna keep my brush a little bit damp always. Then I'm gonna start going into some colors. Maybe I want a purpley blue planet. As you can see, I'm definitely getting messy with my paint palette here because this is my own paint palette, so I'm not worried about keeping it too clean. So now I can go in here, and you'll see I just barely touch the wet surface, and because the paper is already wet, it's like taking the purple pigment and bringing it over, and it's just this really cool experience. And I can add more, I can layer the same color to make it a more intense purple, or I can blend on top. Let's see, what else I can also kind of push a little bit the paint and like what direction I want it to travel. I can push the color. I want you to go down there. So I kind of push it around to the edges. And it's pretty much gone to the edge. Maybe I want to add, I don't know, a little bit of orange right there. See how that blends and mixes. Kind of interesting. maybe some yellow. And the cool thing about watercolor paper, it's much thicker, and so, ooh, that was cool. It's not gonna tear like some other, like printer paper might, you know, if you get it too wet. So let's see, that's one. Try another one with some different colors. So wet brush. Make my circle. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe this is a fiery hot planet. I want some red. Ooh, that was cool. It's fun to see how the pigment will pick up. I want some red, purple. Okay, so now we're moving on to printer paper. So this paper, sorry, not printer paper, cardstock. So this paper is not necessarily designed for watercolor, but it's definitely thicker, so it's less likely to tear when you get it wet. You'll see when I paint, the color is not going to just all of a sudden like spurt out and travel around your wet circle that you painted in the first step. So it's going to take a little bit more work on your part to push the color around with your brush. But that's fine. I think this technique just basically encourages you to keep your paper and your brush wet so that the colors blend. Because to me, that's kind of how, you know, satellite pictures of the Earth or other planets look when I see pictures of them. So same first step, wet brush. My brush is, my water is definitely getting dirty here, but that's okay. Easier for you to see and for me to keep track of where I put the water. So I'm getting it nice and wet. One thing that I forgot to mention is so after this step, you've pretty much got your circle finished. So what should happen is the paint, even if you put the brush that has your color on it in the middle, it will eventually spread to the edge, so you don't have to ever redo your circle shape. So kind of spreading, you can see. Doesn't do anything quite as dramatic as with the watercolor paper, and you kind of have to work a little bit more to push to keep your brush more wet, I would say. Ooh, that was cool. To keep your brush more wet and a little bit more work pushing the color around. I feel like I don't want to change too much now because that was just really cool. Let's see what happens when they meet. Ooh, are they gonna do much? So yes, definitely there's a wet pool right there. I can see it. So when you have finished this planet, keep this paper flat and put it somewhere where no one's going to touch it to dry. Or, I mean, actually you could purposefully move it around and change it. But then once you're happy with it, you know, don't hang it up vertically somewhere. Keep it flat to dry. Lastly, printer paper, so you can see that it still works. Let's just try one. Definitely, if you're using printer paper, put something down on your table that doesn't matter if it gets wet, because it's gonna soak through. You can tell already that it's soaking through. Let's end this one on a planet that kind of resembles Earth, since it is almost Earth Day right now. So we're going to do some blues and greens. So just be gentle with your brush on your paper, because the paper is now very wet and very delicate. Printer paper, very delicate right now in this wet stage. So it's not just actually getting your paper too wet that will break the paper, it's getting it too wet and then being rough with your brush on it. So if you get it really wet but then you let it dry, you're gentle with it and then you let it dry, you know, it's not actually the end of the world. All right,